Fellas, AC here. Welcome to another review. Now, before I start the review, let me tell you that this is the first video I'm shooting on my new Canon M50, which is slated as one of the most sought after camera for YouTube vloggers. So I want your feedback on the picture quality. I've also done another thing. I've used an external shotgun mic to enhance the audio quality. Some of you have complained in the past that the audio quality wasn't the greatest, so a little bit of feedback on that would really help. Now I want to show you what I was shooting with. See, I'm a minimalist. Yeah, when I travel, I want to travel light. So I was shooting with this Sony. Yeah, this Sony, actually I can't remember the full name of it. It's RX100 III Mark III. There's Mark V as well. But this is what I was shooting with. It's a very fine camera. It doesn't have an external audio jack, but it has a fully functional flip screen. It's a great camera for people who like things to be small and don't want to invest so much luggage space. I travel a lot, and I just wanted a camera which I could shoot a video and photographs with, and this did a fine job for me for the last 4 years. Anyhow, I wanted to go one level up, and I just want your feedback. Now, let's talk about New York Intense by Nicolai Fougere Creator. That's how they actually call themselves, which is very confusing and a mouthful. Also tell me the autofocus of the camera, because this should be a very fine autofocus. It's supposed to have 2-pixel autofocus. Apparently, very expensive cameras from Canon actually have this, and this is the great feature of this camera. So, New York Intense, I do not know whether this will be picked up. If it is, then I'll be very happy. So, New York Intense. Now, if you're on Instagram, this fragrance has got superb reception. Yeah, it's one of the most hyped fragrances on Instagram. So, I just want to let you know that up till now, whenever I've tried a hyper hyped fragrance, super high fragrance, I have been disappointed most of the times. Yeah. So what do I think about New York Intense? Well, when I say New York, what comes to mind? It's a classy city. Everybody wants to go there. Big businesses are headquartered there. It's got a lot of heritage. It's a mix of old and new. Yeah, they've got the name right. This fragrance has got a mix of old and new. When I spray this, and for the next 1 or 2 hours, this is the favorite part of my fragrance. Although most people say the dry down is better, I don't think so, and I'll tell you the reasons. So when you first spray, it's a slightly sweet, fruity, lemony smell because of one fruit that I've encountered previously in Amouage Imitation Man. It's citron fruit. Why is it a mix of old and new? It's basically a Fougere and Chypre fission with some modern elements. One modern element, I think, is the creamy, fruity citron fruit. And it's beautiful. It's absolutely beautiful. The opening is amazing. So it's slightly sweet, tangy, or lemony, I should say, creamy citron fruit with a little hint of lavender and slight hint of blackcurrant. Now I've checked the list, notes list. There's no blackcurrant, but they've used 2 animalic notes. In fact, they've used 3 animalic notes. And it's amazing. They've used castoreum and civet. Now, I think either of those 2 has a tendency to smell like blackcurrant bud. So fruits, yeah, fruity smell with superb depth and freshness to it. The lavender Fougere-like quality, that depth and freshness is amazing. You will love it the moment you spray it. After about 15 minutes, it starts to bring in oak moss. Now, oak moss is very sharp and thin. Here, it's sharp but not thin because it's very well complemented by styrax. That's the 3rd animalic note. Styrax has a tendency to smell rubbery or leathery vanillic smell. There's also vanilla, but it's in the dry down. So, leathery vanilla-like smell with the fruity blackcurrant, and a good dose of citron fruit, which goes away gradually, and lavender starts to pick up. There's also mention of pepper And I do not get the peppery pepper that you would get in designer fragrance, but sometimes I do. So it's a very interesting fragrance. It doesn't smell the same every time I have sampled. And this sample is quite generous. So I've been able to test it at least 4 or 5 times. One hand only. I wanted to conserve. And it's very, very good. Very impressed. When the fragrance dries down, it turns very familiar. Oak moss comes up. The earthy forest floor-like smell of oak moss is complemented by a smell of very earthy, woody patchouli. I can't remember if there is patchouli in the fragrance breakdown, but it definitely has that heady smell. And it becomes very familiar 80s type masculine fougere. So I'll tell you which ones it reminds me of. It reminds me of Hermès, Equipage, yeah, and Chanel, Pour Monsieur, EDT. So it's basically a combination of these two. This is what it reminds me of in its dry down. And it's very familiar. And that's where my fun stopped with the fragrance. Why? Because it's so familiar that I thought, oh, I've smelled this before. Multitude of times. It's also compared to Bleu de Chanel. It's compared to Bois de Portugal by Creed. Yeah, Bois de Portugal is a barbershop fragrance, which is a fougere of the 80s type fragrance. Very interesting fragrance, very lemony and bright. This is also lemony and bright when it starts. So I can see the comparisons. But these two is what it reminds me of. There's also a leather note, which also makes it very close to Equipage, because Equipage has a very nice, significant oak moss leather combination. That leather is basically Styrax, which I don't get here, but I definitely get in the dry down. And this is a very faint dry down, it's about 8 to 9 hours. So that's the signature of the fragrance. It's like a fusion of Chypre and Fougere with elements of vanilla and Styrax, I think, which make it slightly unique and modern. But basically it's an 80s Fougere and Chypre combination. It's got all the elements: oak moss, leather, lavender, bergamot. It's got all those elements that 80s fragrances used to have, the famous masculine fragrances. So that's the scent in a summary. So pros and cons. Number one pro, this is a very creative fragrance. This was created in 2014 by Patricia Nicolai. I forgot to mention that at the start of the video. So if somebody is making such fragrances in 2014, it takes a lot of guts. You know, nobody goes into those territories. So it's a very creative fragrance. Also, she doesn't stick to that typical hardline fougere. She brings in the Chypre elements and creates a fusion. And that's what makes the fragrance extremely creative, modern. That's number one. I was very impressed. Number two, she's named the fragrance extremely intelligently. New York. Yeah, as I explained. The fragrance, the name New York, it makes a lot of sense. This is a fusion of modern and classical elements, which very few fragrances do that nowadays. So that's number two. It's a beautifully named packaged fragrance. Number three would be the appeal. The fragrance appears to be very classy, sophisticated, grounded kind of a person. Yeah, even mature. So that sort of fragrances have a market, have an appeal. So it's got this sophisticated, elegant charm about this fragrance. It doesn't smell vulgar like some of the 80s fragrances you used to, just animalic, on your face, oak moss. It doesn't do that. Everything is restrained, rounded, spherical type of a beautifully composed fragrance. Those are the three top points I can tell you. Pros. Downsides. Familiarity. When you spend so much money, and I'll come to value for money, then if it's familiar to something which is available for half the price, then it becomes a bit of a problem to justify a full bottle. Familiarity is the biggest downside. Number second is the price point. 100 ml, 170 pounds. Yeah, euros, I'm sorry, plus postage. You can get Equipage 100 ml for 70 bucks. So run about 50% of the price. And Equipage is beautiful. It has tremendous performance. So those are the two downsides. Performance, decent. Longevity, at least 8 hours. Projection, at least 4 hours. Yeah, decent CH. Very high quality materials have been used, like is the norm with Nicolai. I would say this is medium to high in terms of performance. Age groups, this is a mature scent. I would say 30 plus. Because of the elements I mentioned, this wouldn't suit a person below 30. Not in my opinion. Excuse me. Occasions. I would say this is an all occasion, all weather scent. As long as you're dressing up a little bit. This has got this sophisticated, elegant charm about it. You can put it on a t-shirt and go if you feel like. But in my opinion, this is slightly dressed up, slightly formal, very slightly serious, and very elegant fragrance. So those are the 3-4 verbs I wanted to use to give you an idea where you can wear this. And it's got, pretty decent performance. So a workday scent, proper, no problem. I think I've covered all aspects. Marks out of 10. It's a very nice fragrance, but because it's so familiar to me, I'm going to give it a 7 out of 10. It could have been better, but it's just very familiar to me. Hope you like the review, fellas. Take care. Bye-bye.